Hey guys, welcome back to the Game Room. This is my top 10 games of the year video. It's a little bit different than you were expecting because since I play everything randomly, it's not just games from 2022, it's games that I played this year. So my top 10 games, and of course it's just my opinion. So what do you have to do to qualify to make it on the list? Well, I have to have not played the game before and have played it for the first time this year, or I could have played it many years ago, I just don't have a good memory of it, or I never finished it, or something like that. Or the game could have like a new release that's been upgraded significantly enough to qualify, like a remake, like Resident Evil 3 or something like that. The remake of that game would qualify. So that's what it has to be to get onto the list. So sit back, guys, relax, let's go through these games. There's some really good ones. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. It really helps grow the channel, and I'd appreciate it. Coming in at number 10, we have a game on the Famicom that I thought was fantastic, and I could not stop playing it. And that game is Quarth. Do you like shmups? Do you like Tetris? Do you like feeling like you're the greatest gamer of all time while simultaneously thinking you're like a massive idiot? Well then, if that's the case, you're going to love this game. You're going to love Quarth. It was released on the Famicom back in 1990, and it only ever really was ported to the United States, I think on the Game Boy. And this game it's super fun, it's fantastic, it's challenging, it's addictive, it's unique. You can see as your ship advances up the screen, in typical shooter fashion, you're greeted by blocks instead of enemies. And instead of firing bullets, you shoot out the little pieces to complete the blocks above. So just like Tetris, when you complete a box, it disappears and adds to your score. And what makes the game so enthralling is when you get into recognizing the patterns of the blocks and you just start like typing out these rhythms on the controller to, instinctively clear out the patterns you recognize. And it's kind of like typing Morse code or something where once you have it in your muscle memory, it becomes like, second nature while you're playing. And this game is fantastic for, quick pick up and play sessions. And it'll even let you start from the stage you left off of, at the beginning menu, just like Tetris on the NES. And I have to say, this is like the best arcade style game I played all year. And every time I sat down to play it, I lost all track of time and only stopped, when my hands got too tired to play anymore. So I can't recommend this game enough. You have to try out Quarth. Coming in at number 9 was a game I played like crazy over the Thanksgiving break. I loved it. It caught me by surprise. I'd seen some gameplay footage before and I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't think it was going to be this good. And that game is Loop Hero on the Switch. So this game was like a surprise hit from 2021, and it seemed like every streamer was, playing this constantly for about a month, and then it all kind of stopped. And I found the gameplay really intriguing, but I waited to pick up a copy of the game till a physical edition was released. And the game is like a deck builder roguelite, where your character automatically walks around these randomized loops and auto battles along the way. All of the gameplay centers around using cards from your pre-built deck to build scenery around the loop, and also collecting weapons and armor to strengthen your character. And choosing where to build things and what items to equip is really the focus of the gameplay. That's what you're going to be doing most of the time. And there's a ton of nuance and strategy involved in this. As you move along, you'll collect resources that can be used to upgrade your camp outside of the combat loop, and this will slowly upgrade your character over time and eventually give you the edge that you need to win, to succeed. I played this game for like 30 hours over the Thanksgiving break, and I loved every minute of it. Even my 8-year-old daughter was intrigued by it and played it for several hours, and she'd never played a game like this before, and she more or less was able to pick it up. So it's not so overwhelming as a lot of, roguelites can be. She was able to dive into it. My only complaint with this game is that there really is no in-game content, after you finish the final boss, other than just continuing to upgrade your character. If there was more content in this game, it would be much higher on this list. Up next is a game that I played. I got addicted to this one as well. It's a little pricey physically. Fortunately, instead of opening my physical copy of it, I was able to find it on the PSN store on sale for like $3. So I just played that version and kept my version sealed. And that game is Steridden, Binary Stars on the PS4. If you were to ask me what my dream game would be, I would tell you that I would love to see a combination of a roguelite and a shmup. And that's exactly what Steridden is. It's a mashup of those two genres. You pick your ship and you set out in typical, horizontal shoot 'em up fashion. As you dispatch enemies, you can pick up new weapons for your ship. And these range anywhere from heavy weapons to melee and even some little bots that you can place around the screen to help you. Every ship is able to equip 2 of these weapons, and the choice of them is what will make or break your run. After defeating bosses, you're given several options to upgrade your ship in typical roguelite fashion. If you're able to get, the correct drops and you choose wisely, you can build an incredibly powerful ship that will just annihilate everything in your path, and it's really fun. It's a total blast to try out the different ships and all the different builds you can achieve, and finally reaching the latter levels as well as the final boss is a very exhilarating experience. I was so in love with this game that I stayed up till the early hours of the morning playing on several different occasions, and I never really do that because I'm so worn out at the end of the day, and I did not want to stop until I finally won. Sadly, the only thing that's holding this game back, in my opinion, is that it has some real technical issues. If you become too powerful and there are too many particle effects on the screen, the game will slow down to a frame rate that's in the single digits. Maybe 1 frame every 9 seconds. It may even possibly crash, which happened to me several times. There were a couple of times that I had a fantastic build going and I was approaching the final boss and was going to win when the game just became totally overwhelmed and crashed on me, and it forced me to lose my run and have to start over. So that's really annoying. It forces you to have to play around what you want to do sometimes to intentionally handicap yourself to keep the game from crashing. And that's what keeps the game lower at number 8 on the list this year. At number 7, we have an 8-bit style game that was a sequel to a spin-off of a spiritual successor to a different series. And I loved this game. I thought it was fantastic. And it's Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2. I have the collector's edition, but it's on the PS4. Like I said, this is the sequel to a spin-off game that was a Kickstarter bonus for a completely different game. And the fact that it made onto my top 10 games of the year list is really no short feat. I play a lot of games. And the fact that this series keeps doing so well is really a testament to the great game design. So, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is an 8-bit Castlevania-inspired side-scrolling action game that was a Kickstarter bonus for the game Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And when it came out, it was so highly reviewed and well-received that it got its own sequel. And luckily, both of them received physical releases through limited run games. As you can see, this game is highly inspired by Castlevania 3 on the NES. You play as Zangetsu, and you have to fight your way through hordes of enemies as you travel through, these different stages that are really diverse and memorable. As you progress, you'll collect these allies along the way to assist you, and you're able to switch between these different allies at any time, and they all have, their strengths and weaknesses that you'll need to take into account, to succeed and beat the game. There's also some minor Metroidvania elements in the game where you use the abilities of the different characters to help you reach hidden areas that contain upgrades that upgrade all your characters, and that's really paramount to your success. After you beat this game for the first time, you're greeted with tons of other modes, different routes to the game, multiple endings and storylines. There's a ton of content here. It'll keep you busy for hours and hours and hours, believe me. If this game had been released in the NES days, it honestly probably would be considered the best game on the console. So that'll let you know how I feel about it. And if you haven't tried it, you should definitely dive in and give it a shot because it is fantastic. Coming at number 6, we have one of the great games on the Super Nintendo. Many people consider it to be the best game on the system and maybe one of the best games of all time. That's Super Metroid. I know. I should have played this game before now. I tried it a few times in the past, but I was never able to actually sit down and put more than like an hour or two into it. And boy, am I glad I did. This is the granddaddy of the Metroidvania genre, as is evident from the name Metroid. And it really set the groundwork for what would define the elements of gameplay that have remained so popular, in so many games, even to this day. You play as Samus Aran, and you have to investigate an alien world. As you defeat enemies and explore, you collect items and discover hidden areas, you'll gain new abilities that let you progress a little further each time. Unlike the NES game that came before it, you have an in-game map this time that helps you determine the areas that you still need to explore, and this helps immensely with getting stuck in a loop of not knowing where to go or what to do, which plagues so many games. Filling in the map and finding the new weapons and upgrades and seeing all the strange enemies the game has to offer is both addictive and it's really rewarding. And despite some frustrations with some of the clunky controls and some maybe esoteric clues directing me to the next area, I had a great time with this game. I don't consider it the best Metroidvania of all time by today's standards, but I do feel that we owe a lot to this game for its influence and its longevity. And it still holds up extremely well and can hold its own against, most of the great games in the genre that have copied it. Fantastic game. We all know it. You gotta play it. At number 5, we have a game that originally came out on the PC and was free, and it was like a cultural phenomenon. I played it there. It blew my mind. I always wanted a physical version, and they announced it for the Switch, and I think the PS5. I have the Switch version here. But it had enough new content to warrant a second playthrough. And that's how it made it onto this list. It's fantastic. It's a horror game, although it doesn't look like it. And that's Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. Like I said, I also played this on the PC, and it blew me away. I could not say enough great about it. So when I saw that there was a Plus version being released on the consoles with all this extra content, I had to get it. This game is probably as well known for the reaction videos that it spawned as much as it is for its actual content. And I know from what you're seeing on the screen that there's no way you would ever believe that this is like a psychological horror game, but it totally is. The game is a visual novel where you're invited to join a literature club by your childhood best friend. And upon arriving, you realize that the entire club consists of like only cute girls. And from this point on, the game basically plays like a dating sim. But, as you can imagine, it isn't too long until, tragedy ensues. And after that, the game descends into this, like, cavern of insanity that's really, really, truly shocking and disturbing. And the events and twists of the game are some of the most memorable I've ever experienced. And the game really stuck with me long after I finished it. Don't let the cutesy presentation fool you. Doki Doki Literature Club is a horror game through and through, and it is packed with enough symbolism and meta content to keep even, the most thorough conspiracy theorists busy for years to come. This is a fantastic game, and if you're not sensitive to disturbing content, you've got to give this one a try. Coming in at number 4 was a game I played very recently, and I never in a million years expected it to make it this high onto the list. But it did. And that is To the Moon on the Nintendo Switch. I purchased this game on a total whim from Limited Run Games, and it wasn't even on my radar at all before this, and I only got it because it received overwhelmingly positive reviews, so I just threw it into a big order. This game is a narrative-driven, 32-bit inspired adventure game where you play as 2 scientists who have been hired to fulfill a dying man's final wish of going to the moon. They achieve this by using virtual reality to dive into this old man's memories and gather clues so that they can construct a new memory and implant it into his mind so that he thinks he actually did go to the moon. What unfolds from this point of investigating this man's memories is very bittersweet. It's sad. It's, quite often tragic. It deals with heavy subject matter like developmental disorders, love, loneliness, loss, grief, but it does it in a very respectful and masterful manner that I've rarely seen in any other video game. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but the final hour of this game had me in actual tears. Up to this point, the game had lost me a little bit, but the ending was so spectacularly done that it launched this game all the way up to the top of the best games I played this year. This may be one of the most complex, heartbreaking, heartwarming, and finest stories ever told in a video game. And I'm saying that with no sense of irony whatsoever. If you like a good story, you have to play this game. Coming in at number 3 is a game on the original Game Boy. I had it as a kid, but I never finished it, and my memories of it had faded pretty well over the last, oh my Lord, 30 years. So I decided to play it again. It was in the backlog and it got picked for me. Number 3, fantastic game, Donkey Kong. I'll just come out and say it. This is the best game on the original Game Boy. I'll die on that hill. I received this as a gift when I was a kid, and I thought to myself, oh God, it's just like Donkey Kong. Who wants to play this old game? And after playing through the first 4 stages of this game that really are just, good old Donkey Kong, the game absolutely flips you on your head and introduces almost like 100 new levels that are just, pure puzzle platforming genius. There's no other way to say it. You're playing as Mario and you have to work your way through a series of ever increasingly difficult stages that introduce like tons of new mechanics that you'll have to master to succeed. And the game never really seems to run out of new and exciting ideas, and it'll keep you hooked all the way till you hopefully finally reach the end. When I was a kid, I enjoyed this game, but I wasn't able to finish it before I had to trade away my Game Boy and all of its games. And I remembered it fondly, so I was really looking forward to it. But I never thought that this would be like the 3rd best game that I would play all year. Video Game Donkey recently did a video of this talking about how it introduced so many mechanics into the Super Mario series, and he's not wrong. So watch that video if you haven't. This game is fantastic. Like I said, it's the best game on the Game Boy, and it's an absolute must-play for any serious gamer out there. I can't believe it. This game absolutely blew me away. It blew my daughter away. Everybody in the house loved it. If you own a PS5, you own this game. Sadly, it's only available digitally. So number 2 is Astros Playroom. I can't believe I'm putting a freaking tech demo as my number 2 game of the year. Astros Playroom is the game that comes pre-installed on every PlayStation 5, and it's the sequel to the incredible Astrobot Rescue Mission, which is the best PSVR game that I've ever played, hands down. The incredibly cute and adorable Astro takes you through these 4 worlds of 3D platforming goodness that teach you the new features of the PS5 controller. But what the game actually is, like a love letter to all things PlayStation. There are countless references to beloved games from Sony's past, and the attention to detail is breathtaking. If you look closely, even the individual blades of grass are ribbon cable that plug into a PCB. And it's going to make you want to explore every nook and cranny of this game just to soak up everything that they try to throw at you. And not only that, the game plays incredibly well and is full of tons of amazing ideas and interesting mechanics. I feel that Astro can hang in there with some of the more well-known mascots and their flagship series, and I wish Sony would do more with this series because I think this is really the premier mascot on the system. I 100%ed this game and got the Platinum Trophy when I first played it earlier this year. After having to go back and play it some more to collect the gameplay footage for this video, I felt like an actual physical reaction when I experienced it again. The nostalgia hit me so hard that it was palpable, and a wave of warmness filled me up, and a huge grin spread across my face playing this game. And seeing my daughter play it, and her asking me oh, what game is this reference from? And you say it's from Bloodborne. And what game is this a reference from? And you say Crash Bandicoot. Seeing her interest in that and wanting to play those games because of this game, man, the team that made this knew what they were doing, believe me. If you have a PlayStation 5, you've got to go play it. If you haven't played it already, do it. The Astrobot series is really remarkable. And like I said, I hope Sony does some more with it. I really do. All right, guys, if you made it this far, thank you so much. Coming in at number 1 is a game from 2022. Probably everybody's top game of the year. It blew me away as much as everybody else. I'm sure you know what it is. It's on the PS5. And it's Elden Ring. I'm sure this would come as no surprise to most of you out there. I mean, maybe it will, because I play all my games randomly, and it's an oddity when I actually play a game that came out, that year. But I'm glad I got to play this one when the hype was still alive and kicking. It was the first game I played on my PS5. And in case you didn't know, I don't know how that'd be possible, but Elden Ring is like the evolution of the Dark Souls games. It takes the the punishingly difficult gameplay and understated storytelling and lore and, the awesome and incredible atmosphere and all the memorable characters of those games, and it puts it all into this vast and varied open world. And while I initially thought this would be too overwhelming, I quickly realized that the open world and all of its options that it provided would go a long way to solving one of the key issues with the Souls games, and that is getting stuck at one part and not being able to progress due to the difficulty. It can feel like you're oftentimes banging your head against a wall. But in Elden Ring, if you get stuck in a dungeon or at a boss, you just leave and go to a different one, or finish some side quests, or just randomly roam around the countryside getting in battles with random enemies. And after you do this for a while, go back to where you were stuck before and try it again now that you're stronger and, have better equipment. This game is so well crafted that it made me feel like I was actually part of this, huge and magnificent world, rather than just a character that was trying to conquer it by, killing everything in my way. And it's massively expansive and filled with so much detail that it's really remarkable that anyone could make this game at all. I'm dumbfounded by it and what FromSoft has done. And I know I'm not alone when I say that Elden Ring was the best game that I played all year. It's a landmark game that it masterfully shows what can be done when a company, with a strong vision receives the funding to make a AAA game. And nobody deserves it more than FromSoft. They've been killing it, for over a decade now. And I have a ton of faith in them for their games. Well, guys, those were my top 10 games of the year. I played close to 100 games this year, which was a lot less than last year. I played 165 games last year, but I have a newborn, so there's not as much time to game as there usually is. I have to work in an hour or two here and there, and I play a lot of old stuff too, and those go by really quickly. But if you made it this far, thank you again. Hope you had a wonderful year. I look forward to going into this next year, 2023, with all of you and putting out new content. It comes out every Saturday. And thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.